Welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. My name is Dirk-Jan Upkes, and on this podcast I give the women who work in tech the platform they need to inspire and empower each other. Join me on a journey into the world of entrepreneurship, funding, biases and role models to discover the strategies for success in the tech industry. In other words, how women can disrupt tech. Are you ready to listen? Hey, welcome back to Women Disrupting Tech, and thank you for tuning in to episode 127. When you're building a global company, you need global talent. I mean, how else are you going to create products and services that your audience around the world can relate to? But how do you make sure that these talents feel at home when they need to relocate to another country? In this episode of Women Disrupting Tech, you'll hear the answer to that question from Marieke van Iperen. Marieke grew up in a hippie community where belonging and giving back were part of daily life. And years later, she discovered that those personal values and community-focused principles can be integrated into a fast-growing company, balancing growth with impact. In this episode, Marieke and I talk about what it takes to make people feel at home when they move to a new country and why relocation, when done right, can become a powerful tool for building inclusive teams. You'll also hear her stories about bootstrapping, scaling, and learning to lead with intention. And we'll explore how challenges around immigration and housing can be turned into opportunities. So when you're ready to listen and learn how to use relocation to build inclusive teams, please welcome to Women Disrupting Tech, Marieke van Iperen. Before we start, I want to highlight an event that Embrace Health organizes on the 3rd of December 2025 at Equals in Amsterdam, titled Understanding Women's Health. As you know, I'm really passionate about the need for everyone to learn more about how women's health works and how it is different from the health of men. Visiting this event will help both men and women better understand women's health and how it impacts energy, mood, productivity, and overall well-being at every stage of life. For more information and for tickets, please check out the link in the show notes or search for Understanding Women's Health in the Luma app. So, Marieke van Iperen, welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. Good to have you. My first question is always, how did you get into your current job or current position? In your case, that's CEO of Setly.
Nice. Well, great first question. It was definitely never on my list to become a CEO or founder. I simply wanted to travel the world, learn as much as I could. I ended up working in HR, recruitment, living across the globe, and literally feeling the pain myself of people moving and not being able to solve that. And an experience that I would really stand by and help people feel at home. So at some stage, after I became a mum and life changed dramatically and purpose became a little bit more important, I was like, why not? Maybe there's a niche here. Maybe I can start my own company. And that became Setly. Fast forward 5 years later, and that led to me now being the CEO and co-founder.
Yeah. So I read something interesting in your bio that you were raised as a hippie. You grew up as a hippie. Does that help you at all, or does that actually do the opposite? So does it block you from doing things?
Absolutely. I was brought up in a community. My parents were hippies and they traveled a lot and we worked together. So I think the importance of shared values, giving back, and always prioritizing the common benefit over personal interest and experience over money. So I think it taught me a lot about life and what I stand for. So it also showed a bit of a difference going into the startup world because that was very different and with its goals and its setup. But I think with Sadly, ultimately, I was able to combine the best of both worlds because the values, the community are still very much central in what we do and the giving back piece. but yes, you can also achieve growth and financial gain. So
Yeah.
it was, yeah, it was interesting to see those worlds come together.
Yeah. Because how did you marry the two? Because the startup world is like really more almost performance oriented and also a bit about, well, not a bit, quite a bit about money.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We started Bootstraps, I think, for that reason as well, because I really wanted to stay close to the values, what we stand for, and our mission was to create a world where everyone would feel at home.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, we were growing 200, 300%. And we were on the list of fastest growing company in the world, startup in the
Hmm.
world. And that's when we start getting a lot of interest from VCs. And up until that moment, I'd never considered it, to be honest. But then when we started having some of those conversations and learned that there's also impact VCs, and you learn about, hey, you can achieve
Hmm.
impact at global scale if you link it to the ESG goals. And you can get the best of both worlds because you can grow, there will be more revenue, and you can make more impact. So for me, that felt like a good partnership and a good trajectory.
Okay, so it was essentially about finding the right investors
Yeah,
who had
it
more
was.
of an impact mindset, and then money comes sort of along, but it's not the primary purpose.
And it still isn't. I shouldn't say this too loud, probably for the investors, but it's not for me. But for me, it is the
Right.
impact that we can make at scale, and money helps with that, right?
Yeah.
So getting the money in order to scale to more countries, and also to grow together.
Yeah. Uh, you also lived and worked outside the Netherlands. And you said in the beginning something along the lines of, okay, that I saw how that impacted me, probably you, but also other people around you in terms of feeling at home and becoming part of that society. How did that weave into Sadly?
Yeah, I think during my time abroad, which initially started as 1 year abroad and ended up being 15 years,
Oh, okay.
literally living everywhere from Greece to Latin America. I was in China, Australia, Middle East. So incredible experiences
Mm-hmm.
to develop and to learn and to really understand how different cultures work as well. So if there would be one thing, well, there's a few things probably, but never assume. So always remain curious to other cultures and to other people as well. Asking the why question. So that's very much ingrained as well in our culture. I think the other thing that I learned a lot about is the impact again from community. So if you can feel comfortable with yourself, you can feel at home anywhere. And that could be in any country. But a lot of that does link back to community and finding your tribe and finding locals that you have a connection with and can give a sense of purpose.
Yeah. So what do companies get wrong? Because you worked in HR for quite a while, I think. What do companies get wrong when they hire, let's say, people from outside the country?
Most companies just want to get the people in as fast as they possibly can. So they focus on getting the job done. So what skills are going to be needed? They don't really focus on what does it take for someone to move to a new country, to a new culture? Will they be able to find a sense of belonging away from their homeland? So think about competencies like cultural intelligence or
Mm.
resilience, self-awareness, resourcefulness. Those are really critical pieces if you're moving someone to another country
Yeah,
alongside to being an amazing coder or
yeah.
what the skill set is that the individual will bring.
Okay. But does that go wrong in the selection process then? Or is it more in, let's say, if someone is already on board that he or she is just let go, like, okay, you're on, do your thing, have fun, see ya.
Think a bit of both. It depends really on the type of company. Still, one third of moves goes wrong, or someone will leave within the first 6 months. So then you need to work your way back. Did I select the right person? Did I look for those signals already?
Mhm.
Because a lot of times they go home or they go to another country. Or B, did I not have the right setup to give them a sense of belonging within our company, within our culture? Do we have a buddy system? Do we have someone actually checking in with them
Mhm.
beyond just their job scope, making sure that they are landing well?
Mhm. So what does that take? Let's say I'm a manager at a company and I have an expat on my team or multiple expats. Do you actually recommend having multiple expats? Because the reason I asked, just for context, is that when I started interviewing for this podcast, one of the guests told me you never hire one woman on the team to change the culture. You need to hire like multiple women because then they also have a sort of buddy. They can act as each other's buddy, and they will change the culture, the team culture for you. Does that apply also to expats?
Yeah, I'd think so. It doesn't have to be an expat. It could also be a Dutch person who's lived overseas who understands the experience. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it starts with having people on your team who value inclusion, who understand diversity, and doesn't have to have the title expat, but in
Yeah,
general, having multiple people with a diverse background together will definitely help elevate and drive change faster and get to results in a faster way.
yeah. I want to just go back in time a bit. You started sadly about a year, I think, before COVID hit. What happened and how did you pull through? Because I think all of a sudden everyone was hiring people from abroad, but they had to stay at home. So the
Yeah.
whole, let's say, the integration part, physical integration part, didn't need to happen. How was that for you? How did you manage to get through that?
That was a tough one. I think you start a business with the idea that the
Yeah.
world is opening up, and then a
Hmm.
few months in, the world just goes in absolute lockdown.
Yeah.
We just secured our first free customers at that stage, moving their people around. So we had them in Spain, in Italy, in Asia,
Yeah.
all over the world, and they couldn't move. They had already resigned from their previous employer. There was
Mm.
so much insecurity about could they still move? When would they be able to move? When would they be able to start? But also for us as a business, right? We've
Hmm.
just started. We had hired our first team. We had 5 or 6 people. How are we going to pay them? So how do we gonna get through this? Yeah, very grateful that we live in the Netherlands. So there was a system rolled out quite quickly to help startups such as ourselves that we can continue having our team on our payroll and really use that time to better understand the client's needs. And because we had all these people across the globe, we started talking to them about their pain points and what's really important. And I think that really led us to find out, yes, you can get everything right in relocation. You can get the house, you can get the permit, but ultimately, if you don't have connection and you'll feel lonely, it's not going to be successful. So I think in hindsight, it was a blessing in disguise for us because prior to us coming in, we are a digital relocation. Everyone was, why do you need a digital relocation? I think within COVID, people were like, that's quite handy
Yeah.
to relocation because they couldn't go to all of these offices. And also, it really helped us to start creating events and communities. So on our platform at that stage, we would host events about the Dutch culture in a fun way, like a pub quiz or so for everyone being stranded across the globe. And that was actually more to keep us busy at that stage as well. But it was such a success and people valued it so much that it actually became a feature on the platform that we still have, and that's used a lot for people moving to a new place.
Yeah. That's cool. But it's also good that you managed to get through. You've also scaled to a lot of other countries. Meanwhile, How, what is the biggest challenge you ran into doing that? Getting people or
It's an interesting one. It's one I didn't think about before. It's geopolitics. When we started our company,
Mhm.
I think I was aware of the focus on immigration
Yeah,
and immigrants and expats and how rapidly that changes as well, the sentiment in certain countries around that. So I think that was something initially I didn't think through. We had one go-to-market plan that we would then do in different countries. But I think gradually we figured out that Spain is a very different situation than that Germany is, and also that the legislation in those countries is very different as well. So even within the countries, sometimes there's regional differences in how you need to approach immigration and relocation.
yeah,
So I think that was a major learning and also hurdle and how do you then make that scalable? So I think definitely with that came team and people because you can scale so much with tech, but there is an element of people wanting to help people and having a critical vendor network in all of these markets and countries that we go into.
yeah. Do you have local vendors in every single market then?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's also to accommodate, let's say, um, for the differences in culture, and that they can actually land properly locally, let's say. And to your point, I think Germany is a big country, so there's big differences, at least in culture, between East and West. I've experienced that myself. So yeah. Shall we switch to what Settly brings? So maybe we can start by you can start by describing what Setly actually does.
Sadly, is a digital relocation platform helping companies move their people across the globe and making them feel at home. So we've built two platforms. One is for the employer. So we work for a lot of startups, scale-ups, but now also multinationals.
Hmm.
Think in the line of Binder, Personio, Muse, Data Snipper. They have a platform then that integrates with their HRIS. So
Hmm.
they can say for every international hire that we have, we want to give this particular package
Hmm.
that comes with either a lump sum or housing or shipment of goods or immigration. So the company determines what the package will be. And
Hmm.
then the employee gets an app and a personalized service that takes them through a checklist step by step for all the services that are provided by their company. And then
Hmm.
on top of that, they get access to community events, lots of information as well about culture, just to make it a fun experience to land well in a new country.
Okay, but do you then, or does Setly then take care of let's say the landing part of it, or is that still the employer?
It's always a partnership. So I think this is why we love to work with employers that take this job very serious. We can do an amazing job having them
Hmm.
land in the Netherlands, but if the company is not focused on employee experience and letting them well in the company, then you have an issue, right?
Yeah,
So the two go hand in hand and having an aligned vision on employee experience, and we look after the country
yeah,
elements, so everything that's needed, for instance, in the Netherlands, and the company looks after everything that's needed to land well within their culture and their company.
yeah. So in the Netherlands, we just had a pretty far right government with pretty, let's say, relatively, at least for the Netherlands, extreme views on immigration. How did that impact your business? Because if it's, I can imagine that if it's outside if it's another country, you
Mhm.
sort of have in the back of your mind like, okay, that's another culture. But
Yeah,
now it was coming here.
I'll be really honest. I was in
Yeah.
shock. And it starts with our own team. We have 20 nationalities in our own team. So waking up that morning and speaking to my own team about what does that mean? And seeing the questions and seeing the fear in their eyes. What does that mean about me? What does that mean? Am I no longer wanted? Is this a place I want to be living in?
Hmm.
So yeah, it really it hit home initially. And it also created some doubts like, are we in the right place? Are we in the right country? What does that mean? There was a lot of unknowns and insecurity in the beginning. And you also saw that within companies focusing on, hey, we just want Dutch people first before we go to internationals. And I think quite quickly they noticed we simply didn't have enough local talent to fill the role. So the business for that reason wasn't impacted much. But of course, it is a narrative that is impacted
Yeah.
as well. And our job became a lot more policy and comms driven. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up in conversations that I never, government affairs that I was never close to before. But yeah, we're also really interesting to understand the sentiment of why we are where we are. I think it also creates a lot of opportunities for us to enter those conversations and to get closer to one another and now particularly at EU level collaborate.
Mm-hmm. So how did you manage that team-wise? Because I can understand that all of a sudden you have this government, and then everyone is feeling like, okay, do I still belong here? How do you deal with that on a on a personal and team level inside inside a company?
Different for everyone. And this is where you see that people coming from Latin America respond very differently than those from the UK or from Asia. Some you open it up and you have conversation within a group, and some it is more one-on-one. It is really making sure we have the time to have those discussions and to also focus on, hey, what can we now do as a team
Mm-hmm.
uh, to turn this around and to make the impact? Because if we're feeling this sentiment in our own team,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean for all of the users on our platform, for all the internationals working at the companies, for all of the clients we're working with? So I think quite quickly we also proactively reached out to all of our clients just to better understand, hey, what does this mean for you? What is the sentiment? How can we help in any way, shape, or form? Which I think it helped a lot. Also, again, through events and getting together and seeing, hey, we're not the only ones that are thinking like this. Actually, there's a big portion of the Dutch people that do not fully stand by what's happening. And how can we change that narrative and make sure that they also hear those voices
Yeah.
uh, and that they start feeling at home again and getting that sense of belonging within the team first, but then beyond that, and how can they also help share that narrative with all of our customers?
So one thing I picked up on in our conversation so far is that every time there's sort of let's say, negative event, you manage to take that as an opportunity. Do you know where that comes from? Is that something that you learned or?
It's a good one. I hadn't thought about it, but I do. I do. I think being brought up in an environment with a single mom, welfare, money wasn't there. There were a lot of hardships. There were a lot of ways that you just had to turn them around in the positive. And maybe initially that just came a coping mechanism, but I think I really like that coping mechanism, and it
Yeah.
it suits me well, and it really helps me understand the world and continuously have hope, because with every downside, there's always an opportunity to come out stronger if you pause, reflect, and try and take the learnings out of it.
Yeah. Is that also about having a purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the center of it all. And for me, with founding Sedley as well, that to me was combination of all the aspects, traveling, living abroad, community, and giving back again and doing something where I feel I can make a meaningful impact to this world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. Hey, I want to shift back to immigration for a bit because no, we talked about the government and the impact it had. In preparing for this episode, I had, well, let's call it a brainwave for lack of a better word. Um, that we live in a country where we see, or we live in a broader society, the EU, where we see immigration as a problem. On the back of what we just discussed about seeing things as an opportunity, how can we turn this around in our thinking to make it an opportunity and to get the best out of these people? What do we need to do?
I think everything starts with understanding and awareness, and what you see happening, it happens across the globe, not just here. When
Yeah,
people are insecure and they're financially impacted in their own wallet, then anything that's different or odd, that behaves different or thinks different, may become the reason. And that doesn't just impact immigrants, it's LGBTQ. It is a wider issue that we're seeing as well. And I think it starts with understanding why they're feeling this way about immigration
mm,
and about people looking different and feeling different, and then asking the questions and having conversations and always fall back on the numbers. Because if we look the numbers, we'll see why we need immigrants and why we need highly skilled migrants. We've got one of the lowest unemployment rates in the world. It's 4%, yet we have 400,000 jobs open. And unfortunately, even if we would up or reskill any single person in this country, uh, there won't be enough for to fill the roles that we have. So I think sometimes the real issue and maybe the underlying issue is more in regards to housing. Because that's what people, again, they feel,
yeah,
they see. So it's like, oh, the immigrants are here to take up our housing. But what if we would just solve the housing crisis, which
yeah,
has been there for 10, 15 years, and there keep being initiatives, but they're not being resolved. So really working with our government as well to raise awareness on all of these topics and to make sure that we start with an end goal in mind and that we really look at the numbers, because we're only talking about 16,000 highly skilled migrants last year. It's not a big group. But if we would lose that group, what would that mean for our innovation? What would that mean for our growth? What would that mean for our tech ecosystem?
yeah,
Is that something we want to jeopardize?
yeah. There's a lot to be missed then, I think. What would you change in the way we currently approach these files, like housing, like immigration?
A, by coming together and starting with the end goal in mind. Other would call it vision, but
Uh,
really think about, where do we want to be as a country in 20 years? What do we want to be known for?
mm,
Is that indeed innovation? Is that sense of belonging, making people feel at home? What is it? And work your way back from that. And that means, yeah, figuring out housing. That means figuring out jobs. That means figuring out social healthcare system. That means employment laws. That means a lot of other things that will come into play. I wouldn't tackle it as a siloed topic.
do you think it gets tackled as a silo, in silos at the moment?
I do, particularly around the election period. It's of course it's a nice topic
Yeah.
to win your votes with. But when you look at the numbers, is that really the topic we should be talking about? I don't think so. But I understand why we are. Um, so it will probably be a topic again at the upcoming elections.
Hmm.
But once the elections are then done, not much actually happens.
No, that we've seen for the past, what is it, a year. Do you think we can borrow anything from playbooks of other countries or other societies there?
Absolutely. There's a lot to be borrowed from Scandinavia, I think, when it comes to the system
Hmm.
and labor market, the employment system, but also in how they dealt with immigrants. I think Spain at the moment, good example as well, where they're really saying, if we do not get, I think they just had a million refugees signed and given them local status, because they can see the country in 10, 15 years. We need talent, and we don't have this in our own country. It's mainly blue collar workers, but also for the Netherlands. It's not just highly skilled migrants, it's healthcare, it's education, it's blue collar workers where the need is. So I think looking abroad and also seeing how we can collaborate more within the EU
Hmm.
uh, is super important in figuring this out the right way.
Cool. I want to shift a bit. You talked about getting investors on board, and initially you bootstrapped. At what point did you discover you were ready for investors? You mentioned that you were growing like 3, 4x, but what else? What made you ready for to get investors on board?
Not sure if you're ever ready, to be really honest. And I wasn't in the mindset we need to get investors at some stage. I honestly wasn't looking until indeed we got that nomination of fastest growing company, that we had lots of offers all of a sudden in our inbox. That just got me curious about that world because I had a very predetermined view, having worked for
Mm,
Uber as well in hypergrowth. So knowing what that can mean positive, but also
mm,
what the downside could be in working with VCs. But it got curious. I'm like, why not? Maybe we should just take 10 calls and see if what it does to us. Does it confirm our assumptions that we have about the world, or does it indeed open things up? And
mhm,
if when we started having those conversations and we actually felt a click with a few investors, it opened up this whole new world that we didn't know even existed, where there was care about values and how you do things, as well as the results and how you
mhm.
drive them. Because ultimately, one needs to go hand in hand with the other. So I think yeah, it wasn't like a moment that we're ready now, but hey, these guys are really great. How cool will it be to partner up with them and then increase the impact that we can have on society, on the world, with the insights that they bring? And two of our board members, they have scaled startups, scale ups to multinational level. So just having those insights and partnering with someone, yeah, it really felt like a good value add alongside to money being nice, but it was also the partnership with the VCs.
Yeah. Looking back, would you onboard investors earlier if you had to redo the whole thing?
No, but what I would do is probably angel investors. We didn't do that. So we were already so big by the time we started looking for investors. The
Hmm.
ticket size was no longer interesting for angel investors. And looking at other founders and see how much value they get out of those early stage angels
Hmm.
that support them and help them grow. Yeah, I think in hindsight, I would have probably explored that avenue a little bit sooner.
Yeah, but then really targeted at the angel part and not the big VC world.
Correct. No, I actually really, yeah, liked that we've grown this much bootstrap. So by that time, we were really
Mm.
solving the problem that our clients were facing. And it drove us to have a business model that was effective and that was working and that was profitable, which post-COVID became quite of an important piece
Yeah,
for many startups and scale-ups.
yeah, but also for investors, I think,
Yeah, that wasn't before, but it became one of the criteria as well.
because all of a sudden money wasn't free anymore. So what happened to the company as a result? What did it change having investors on board, positive and negative?
It's definitely a big shift that I underestimated. For context, my co-founder is also my partner.
Uh-huh,
So a lot of decisions were made at the kitchen table
uh-huh,
or with the team in the office. We didn't have a board. Uh, so with getting investors on board, you had to set up a board, and all of a sudden I was a chairman of the board, and all of a sudden I had to run effective board meetings without actually having been to one
uh-huh.
prior to that. So I think that was a steep learning curve, a nice one. I got to speak with a lot of amazing founders and clients who run board meetings and learn from them. Matthijs Welle is a perfect example from Muse. He helped me a lot with his insights and learnings along the way. But once you get there and you know how to run them effectively and prep your meetings and what to do and what to not do, it is absolutely such a game changer in a positive way. Like being challenged at the moments that you really need that challenge. Going to someone who actually knows their stuff to help and advise you and quickly get the company in the right direction. yeah, it really helped us um, fast track a lot of decisions.
Did it make it easier to make decisions? Because usually if you broaden the group of decision takers, it slows down the decision taking process. But how was that for you?
Yes, it slows it down, but ultimately the decisions are better and more effective. So in the past, we would just make decisions on our own and run, and we would make a lot of mistakes and we would experiment a lot. And
Hmm.
then that also takes time. And I think now by having a step where you get to learn from others and get that input and then make a decision based on that in combination with data, takes a few more steps, but not that much longer. And we don't have a big board. It's just the five of us. So it's still very manageable.
Yeah, but what I'm also hearing you say is that it's more, um, in terms of processes, it's more efficient because you have less rework,
Yeah.
less decisions that you have to revisit in this case.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're first-time founders, so we learn a lot along the way, but that
Yeah,
takes time as well, right? Learning, it's fun, but it's
yeah.
not always the best for your business. Sometimes it's good to to get some outside
Yeah.
input and make sure you learn or you do the right experiments at the right time because then you get to, yeah, the next steps faster.
Okay, so out of curiosity, yeah, how did you, because you talked about Matthijs Welle, he was on the show 2 episodes ago. How did you get into contact? Did you know him already, or were you linked by investors?
Well, they're a client of ours. So I did know who he was, but we've never actually connected because we work directly with their HR and their mobility team. It was
Mm,
actually through TechLeap. So TechLeap has events, and I'm part of their community. And one was around running an effective board, and it was a small session, and it was held at Muse's office with Matthijs. So that's how I got there.
okay, okay, I understand. Let's go to the future. Let's say that every company would do one thing that is necessary to make people belong in their team, whether they're from outside the country or, let's say, not your stereotypical hoodie guy. What's the one thing companies can do to make people belong?
Sounds simple, but it's not. It's creating a safe space because ultimately you want to create a space where people feel safe to give feedback and to
Mhm.
ask questions and to challenge the status quo. So I think that's the key piece. And what does that mean? It's probably a little bit different for everyone, but for every founder to ask themselves that question, what's needed to create that safe space in my company?
Mhm.
Because then you can ask your team the questions about belonging because they will be eager to help if you have an engaged team.
Yeah.
But they'll be more than happy to help you out, like what can we improve, what's really happening, and what's working well and what isn't. But it starts with yeah, a safe space.
Yeah. What do you consider a safe space?
For me, it's something where people can be themselves and can bring their authenticity to work, where they're not afraid to ask questions, where they can give their candid feedback and they're actually rewarded for making mistakes and having that culture of it's a good thing, let's share learnings and
Mhm.
let's build something together, where you can challenge your leaders and where you can give feedback 360 without there being a form.
Oh, yeah, that's important without there being a form. Because I used to work in a 360, but
Yeah,
that was form based. And
yeah,
I had to
yeah,
still got to pick who in the 360 was giving me feedback.
yeah,
So that way I would create sort of my own safe space. But yeah,
yeah. It becomes quite biased. Uh,
yeah, because you get into your own echo chamber a bit.
I know, I know. I'm a firm believer in having conversations with
How
your team.
Yeah, how do you do a 360 without forms? Just really curious because I have a problem imagining this in. I understand the concept, but I just want to pick your brain on this. How do you do that? Is that sort of one moment every month, quarter that you? sit as a team?
Yeah, you ingrain it in your culture, and we're only just setting it up so that I can actually explain it as well as part of the process.
Mm.
But every time you have a one-on-one with your team, you give them feedback and vice versa. They give you feedback. The same with projects. If you're working together on a project in the moment, ideally the same day, even if possible. If you see something happening, you create that culture to share that feedback, positive or area of improvement. And then it doesn't become this big thing that has to happen once a quarter or once a year, but it happens every day. But you record it and you make sure that it does link to performance ultimately. Um, and that part you do twice a year in our case. Some companies do it quarterly.
Okay, so you really make it micro moments almost of feedback.
Yeah, I would, but we have a small, tight team, so you have that culture where you can give people feedback and people appreciate it as well. And we've had training sessions around, okay, so how do you give feedback?
Mm.
What's the best way to share when something has happened? And always start with how does it make you feel? Don't point any fingers, so that there's certain techniques to help people feel comfortable with giving and receiving feedback, particularly across all cultures, because again, working with people from countries where it's really not done to speak up to your boss because you will lose your job. Uh, two of the continents that we
Mm.
employ.
Yeah.
So in the Dutch directness, they will say anything and everything at any given moment of time. You don't have to ask them a question. So it's it's figuring
Yeah.
out how that is combined.
Yeah. And also giving indeed the safety for people to understand each other's perspective on how that could work
Yeah.
then. So how can men help and contribute to this, to making teams more inclusive, creating safe spaces? Are there specific things that white men like me, taking myself as an example, can do?
I was just going to say everyone needs to be a little bit more like you, because that's where it starts. It's asking these questions. Bias is in everything. It's in everyone.
Mm.
It starts by asking these questions. What is your role? And educating yourself and reflecting and surrounding by people who are different than you, whether it's females or whether it's people from different background or different skin color or the LGBTQ, but making sure you have a collection of people around you that will then become the catalyst for growth, I think.
Sounds like a great place to move to my last question. Thank you very much for the conversation. Really enjoyed this. I hope you did as well. Um, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Setly, where do you want to send them? And also, please tell us about your new upcoming or maybe even already live feature that you have on the platform.
Nice. Well, everyone's always welcome to add me on LinkedIn and to follow me there. We have a website that explains everything and anything about what we do.
Mhm.
And indeed, we have a very exciting new feature because I think we spoke a lot about immigration and
Yeah.
integration as well. And it's super important for us to create a world where everyone feels at home, to not just solve that for the international talent, but also the local talent. And what we were seeing is that with the housing crisis, it's very difficult to find a house,
Hmm.
particularly if you have a lower budget. So for the early to mid-career. So we created something called Tenant Hub, and that's our latest feature where people can find each other within the app. It's completely free. And then together they can have a higher budget and therefore increase their likelihood in finding a home.
And that is also part of making people belong in a
It
society,
is.
that they have a roof over their head.
Yes,
Yes.
foundational to me.
Yeah. So, Marieke van Iperen, thank you very much for an amazing conversation. We'll mention those links in the show notes, and we'll also link to the new functionality. With that, listeners, thank you very much for listening. And until the next episode, keep being awesome. Well, that's it for episode 127 of Women Disrupting Tech with Marieke van Iperen, titled How to Use Relocation to Build Inclusive Teams. Marieke and I hope that you found our conversation as purposeful and practical as we intended it to be, and if you have any questions for Marieke, please share them in the comments on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or YouTube. When you want to connect with Marieke, learn more about Zetly, or get free access to Tenant Hub for your company, please check out the links in the show notes. As usual, you can find the show notes at womendisruptingtech.blog, and you can find that link in the caption. There you can also find more information about the Embrace Health event that I mentioned in the intro. If you've enjoyed listening to this episode, please consider leaving a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Leaving a rating or a review helps new listeners find the podcast and supports my guests by giving them a bigger platform. If you're not already following us, please make sure you follow Women Disrupting Tech on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or YouTube. Following supports Marieke and my other guests in closing the funding gap by the end of 2032. If you'd like to learn more about Women Disrupting Tech, you can also follow the podcast on social media. You can find us everywhere as @WomenDisruptingTech. You can also find the podcast on Substack. On Substack, you'll find in-depth stories and behind-the-scenes insights for each episode, plus the trends that I've spotted across 127 conversations. So don't forget to subscribe to Women Disrupting Tech on Substack. Finally, if you'd like to connect with me directly, please reach out via email, dirkjan@womendisruptingtech.blog, or connect with me on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, just search for my name and you'll find me. With that, I wish you a wonderful day. I hope to see you in the next episode. And until then, as always, keep being awesome.